Let us now discuss on the different land reform measures that are being introduced in our country, India. One of the measures or the land reform measures that are being introduced is the abolition of intermediaries. What are all these intermediaries? I think, like, looking at our country, India, we do have certain systems that do prevail in the earlier years. I think you're been aware, for example, we do have certain groups of individual whom we term as the zamindars, whom we term as the jagirs, the inams, so on and so forth. Okay, I think you've been aware of the zamindari system. You've been aware with the mahalwari system, so on and so many more relating to the entire system that did prevail in our country, India. So if we just have a look or discuss what are these zamindars. The zamindars, they are the group of individuals whom we can term them as the rich landlords or the rich farmers. And these individuals, because they are rich, they are powerful. Okay, so they do really they do really try to do as much as they can to exploit the poor the poor farmers in the rural areas. So they do try to exploit them in terms of fixation of rents, wages, and so many more. So the very existence of the zamindari system in the rural sector, it's one of the uh, problem acts as an obstacle that hinders the growth of the agricultural sector, because we have these exploited groups of individual. The agricultural sector in general cannot grow and prosper. So the government realized that the step that is being taken through the introduction of the land reform measures, it was to do away with the for example, the zamindari system, which is referred to as the abolition of the intermediary tenures. Through the abolition of the system that did prevail, the government of India hope like will be able to solve the so many problems that are being existed in the rural sector. Further, another land reform measures is something to do with the tenancy reforms. Under the tenancy reforms, we have the regulation of rent, we have the security of tenure, we have the ownership rights. Yes, the our farmers are being exploited. Okay, exploited in terms of the rent that they are being charged by the zamindars, because of farmers, they are too poor, they don't have even a single plot of land of their own, so the only choice left for them is just to borrow. But the problem is, whatever rent that the zamindars or the rich farmers or the landlords that they used to charge, it was a very high rate. Okay, that means the rent is very, very high. So if the rent is very, very high, this really affect the growth, really affect the income of the poor farmers. So through the land reform measures, what the government did was it tried to regulate the rent. Okay, rent, that means that are being charged by the zamindars. They no longer have the power to fix whatever amount that they wanted, but instead the government, through the land reform measures, it did fix the amount of rent that they can charge. Further, the tenancy legislation in India has also been made enough provision for security of tenure. The legislation made a provision that the tenants can't be ejected from the land so long as they continue to pay the rent. Another security that the government provided to the farmers is that as long as the farmers they can pay whatever rent that they are being charged, okay, they cannot be deprived of any plots of land. So this also, it's something that do really help, that do really provided securities towards the poor tenants. Another, it is the ownership rights. If I say the ownership rights, through this step that is being undertaken by the government, that means through these ownership rights, it did really give some sort of an incentive on the part of the producers or the farmers to produce more, okay, like to raise the agricultural productivity and as such to raise their income level. Another land reform measures is the ceiling on land holdings. Initially in the early years, if you look at those rich landlords, they are very, very rich. They are very, very um, rich in the sense like they do own acres and acres of land. Okay, but what the government did in this particular situation is that it imposed some sort of a ceiling or a limit to which each and every landlord can hold their lands. Okay, for example, it imposed a limit of say 10 or 20 acres. If a particular landlord owns say 50 acres of land, okay, what happened was after the imposition of this ceiling, say the government imposed a ceiling of 10 acres, okay, the remains of the land is to be taken by the government. If a particular landlord owns 50 acres, through this particular measures, he no longer can own or has the ownership right over the 50 acres, but he can own only 10 acres. The remaining 40 acres will go to the hands of the government. And what the government did with all these remaining plots of land, the government redistribute all these plots of land through all those marginal or landless farmers. So this also is another very important measures, is another very important step undertaken by the government to help the poor or the landless farmers, which means once upon a time they are too poor, they don't have even a single plot of land, but through the ceiling on land holdings, it enabled them to at least own a single plot of land where they can grow, where they can cultivate the different types of crops according to their uh, according to their wishes. So these are the different land reform measures that are being introduced in our country, India.